Let's have a little bonding moment. If you're anything like me, your friends are your everything. Your chosen family, your band of thieves, the people that would have your back come hell or high water. We would be willing to take a bullet for them. That's very real to us, and thankfully life doesn't put us in the position to actually need to take a bullet for someone, but the feeling is very real nonetheless. And so where we go make a mistake, the least what we can do if we don't have to take a bullet for them is to be there for them in their time of need and keep them away from our demons. In essence, we think that we would burden someone else with our problems, and because we care so much about our friends, we do not bother them with it, because we are afraid that they might leave us for it. Of course, the only out here is that if upon hearing the news that you want to share with them, it puts them into legally liable territory of having to report you to the police, then perhaps you should keep that news to yourself. But that's the thing. Usually speaking, my perception of burdening my friends with my problems is complete fiction, and it actually harms my relationships. It actually hurts your relationships if you do not reach out to them when you need help and only ever show them the good parts. So today's lesson is courtesy of a good talk that I had with my favorite nieces to talk about how you can actually improve your relationships by reaching out to your friends. That is actually a bad news if you keep them from ever being there for you. So to unpack the surprising secret to being a better friend, let's take a step back and analyze why we think what we think. The feeling of being a burden to the people around you is actually very common amongst the people that are the miserable, the lonely and depressed. But unlike Ursula from The Little Mermaid, this does not make you pathetic at all. It's so common in fact, because it fits right into the worldview that we are taught on how to look at things. So what worldview makes us fear that we are costing someone something by using their time? And we've talked about it before and we'll talk about it many times moreover. What we're talking about is the logic of transactionality. The idea that everything has a price and therefore needs to be measured up to one another. It is the logic of our economic capitalist system that is corrupting our social life as well. But we'll go over it again, because most of you haven't seen a banger of a video of the Worm video, I'll link it here. So let's go over transactionality one more time. Transactionality is the idea that everything in life has a price. Your stuff, but also your attention, your time, and your love. But it's not just a monetary value. It is also the idea of a zero-sum game, that in order for someone to win, someone else needs to lose, so the world is in balance again. If I want your time, I need to pay something for it, so we are even again. So we're acting like an exchange happens, that people are keeping score. But the problem being that in friendships, you shouldn't be keeping score. You're not measuring up what you do for someone else to what they do for you. You only start doing that once you already have doubts whether the friendship is working or not. And at that point, it might not be worth being friends anymore. Not everything in life needs to have a price. Not everything needs to have a reason. So you don't have to feel guilty about going to the people that you love. Your need of feeling better doesn't need to be offset by them suffering in some way. You feeling better can be a reward for them as well. And even if it doesn't necessarily to them feel like a reward, like my best friend having to hear about me talking about my crush incessantly for every single time we've met up over the last few months. It might not be a reward for him, but it is also not the case that he thinks that I need to make his time worthwhile, that I need to be useful for him in some way. So do not feel like you are a burden to your friends. Real friends would not think that you are a burden. Unless of course you start overloading that bridge by keep going to them with the same problem in a very short time span, because at that point your friendship becomes a therapy session. If you don't understand the bridge analogy, please go back to this video about anxiety. It's one of my favorites and I think you will like it too, so I'll link it right here. Something can be useful for you without having them to be worse off for having to put up with you. In fact, it might work in exactly the opposite way that you expect it to work. It is by something that we call the Ben Franklin effect. It's the idea that when you ask someone to do favors for you, they will actually like you more. And the reason for that is that if you ask someone to do a small favor and they do it for you instinctively because we're polite, in their mind, afterwards they rationalize saying, oh, I did something for them, I must like them therefore, and so afterwards we'll start creating a like for you in their mind. That's why lots of these tips video recommend you to ask people to do favors for you, because you actually make people like you more. You can grow closer to them by allowing them to be there for you, which will be a theme that we'll come back to later. Of course, by itself it's not enough to make someone like you, but it does put people in the mindset that they already like you more than a stranger and makes it easier to actually connect with them. So doing things for one another actually helps strengthen your connection. Even when you don't think that you need anything from someone, it might still be worth reaching out. Let me tell you why. I'll give you a secret story of mine. During my high school days, it was just me, my older brother Patrick, and my father living in the same household. And my father is an engineer. My brother needed a lot of help to do his homework and study for the tests because he's kind of special needs. He also finds things to be quite difficult, and I never had any problems with learning, and therefore I didn't need any help. Every night on the dot at 6 p.m, my father and my brother would sit around the table and study for my brother's homework and help him learn for the tests. It was actually quite a bonding experience for them because my father was very interested in my brother's academic success and was always rooting for him because he was involved in what was going on. For me, however, it was kind of a different story. Only afterwards I realized that I felt quite neglected at the time, but the way that we thought about it back then is that it was normal, and my parents too thought, well, he's growing up, learning to be independent, he doesn't need any help, and that's fine. Only looking back at it now do I realize that I might have felt a bit neglected and it wasn't normal. It has still lots of effects on me that I'm exploring right now, that my brother got all of this attention and I did not. But you can see this effect of that involving people actually helps you strengthen their connection, because my brother had quite a good connection with my father and he was invested in my brother's academic success because he was actively involved. And I didn't have that much of a connection with my father in that way at the time anyways. But that changed one day. During high school I had a physics test about electricity, and well, my father is an electrical engineer, so he knows what he's talking about. And so for once I thought it might be useful to ask my father for help, even though I probably didn't need it to get a passing mark. So he was surprised and almost honored, so he took my physics book, he studied the entire chapter and infused parts of the knowledge that he had into it, and then once it was time to study for it with him, he sat around the table, he had prepared lots of stuff, and we went over it during the entire night. I'm telling you, it might have been quite a tedious study experience, but he poured his heart and soul into teaching me the ins and outs of basic high school electricity, and once I had to do the test the next day, I aced that. I got the highest grade of the class, and even the teacher was surprised because I didn't necessarily get good grades before then, and especially because the last question I used a way of approaching a problem that was not something that was taught to people until university level electrician. So in essence, my father went above and beyond in order to make sure that I got a good grade for that test, and believe me, when I came home with that good grade, he was more excited than me to get it. He was so happy that he could finally be useful for me. And years later, when we talked about this story, he still tells this story apparently to colleagues of his when he first meets them, saying, "This is what I did for my son." It's so interesting because I thought that I used up his time and it was nice to get the grade for my sake. But he was so happy about it because he became part of that achievement. He was proud that he was finally able to be there for me, and he felt guilty about not being able to be there for me for years as well. In all likelihood, I could have gotten a passing mark without his help, as I've always had. But by getting his help, not only did I get a grade that we both did not know was possible, more than I would ever have had, but I also improved my connection with him, which is even more valuable. So the way that you should frame it is not that you are a burden to people, but that the people that love you want to be there for you. Allow them to be there for you. They want to be in your life as well and be there for you and prove that they love you. Open up your heart by asking people to be there for you, and they will be happy with that as well. It will make them more invested in your life, improve your connection, because you can get to celebrate the wins together, but can also be there for each other when times get tough. But it's also a necessity here. I spoke to my cousin recently about this, so shout out to Rose, so let's talk about it. There's also a danger of not sharing your problems with the people around you. She thought it was very noble to not do it because, well, I don't have many problems, but I like to be there for my girlfriends when they come to me with their issues. That seems to be good, right? Well, if you don't necessarily give your problems to them as well, it might seem to them like they are being bad friends and using up too much of you without being able to be there for you as well. It might make you seem emotionally quite distant, that you're not willing to share with them whenever something ails you. Even when you don't have any problems still, it's important to keep the connection equal so that it doesn't become a therapy session. They might start taking advantage of you if the only thing that they talk to you for is going to you with their troubles and not feeling the responsibility that they should be feeling towards you when you also make use of their services. Ultimately, we condition other people how to treat us. By allowing them to get away with stuff that is bad, they will start making use of that and take us for granted. So make sure that you keep the relationship equal. If you do not keep your relationship equal and get into a therapist-client relationship, then they also do not have the tools to be there for you when you need it finally. They might not be accustomed to that kind of relationship and think, yeah, man, you know, we're not that kind of friends. You've made it awfully clear over the last years that I can come to you, but you do not have to come to me. And so I don't even know how to deal with this nonsense. And that might make you resentful of them because they were not willing to be there for you in your time of need. So partly we are responsible for the way that our friends treat us, but it's not always the case. You also make it difficult for yourself to find out which are real friends and not real friends if you only ever show them the good side. If you don't come to them when times are tough, you never check whether they were absolutely willing to be there for you either. So they might again take you for granted. So to strengthen your connection to someone, it needs to go both ways. You need to be able to be there for them and they need to be there for you. You do not win at friendship by only being there for them and not allowing them to be there for you. Because in our subtle bits of connection, we want to connect to people, and if you do not open up your heart, let your guard down, then they might not feel the warmth necessary to grow closer to you, and your connection will never get any deeper. Allowing people to be there for you in your time of need will allow you to trust them more, validate the trust issues that you might have, and they will trust you more as well, that they are someone that you count on when times get tough. For real friends, being there for you is a blessing, not a curse. It's really a matter of allowing them to be there for you, allowing them the privilege of taking care of you. The feelings that I used to have as well of not wanting to burden my friends were not the noble independence that I once framed it as. It came from a place of distrust. I distrusted other people to stick around if I actually told them my real demons. I did not want to lose the people that I thought loved me by troubling them with my issues. And so I kept everything to myself. But it's not healthy to distrust people to the point that you do not allow them in. I even thought that they did not have a reason to care about me, so I fell victim to the same logic of transactionality that I've been talking about. I felt like if they did not have a reason to care about me, why would they? So, as you can see, learning this lesson has been a long time for me as well. It's been difficult, it's a work in progress, and that's what we're all about on the channel, so we can learn these things together. After all, the only real way to find out whether people are worth trusting is by trusting them. When I doubt it, I reach out to them, and then they can either fulfill my expectations and be there for me so I trust them more in the future, or they can let me down and then I know who's not worth sticking around. And the beauty of this is also that allowing other people to be there for you will deepen your connection. And who knows where that may end up. Because emotions is the universal language of all people, even though you have nothing in common, you might be able to relate to each other well on an emotional level. And my favorite example of this is my best female friend Zilke. She has been there for me in the last 7 years quite a bit, and I would have never expected us to be friends and even this close years later. I love her more than life itself in many ways. We've explored so many things together. I've learned new things about life that I never thought were possible. And all because I allowed her in. Like I said, this is a very recent lesson of mine. This was another one. I hope you really like it. If you really want to improve the connection that you and I have, please like, comment and subscribe and share this video to those who also feel themselves to be a burden, because it's very common. And if you love this message, please stick around for the next one. If there's nothing further, I'll see you in the next one.